to the Falcons and Panthers. What a good game it was. But the Atlanta Falcons hold them off and win it 25-17 on Thursday Night Football. But I'm not here to talk about the teams and their records and all that. I'm here to tell you the fantasy analysis of what happened in the game. So the first player we're going to start off with is Matt Ryan. I said this week to bench Matt Ryan, and he didn't have that great of a fantasy game. 281 yards, an into, and 6 rushes for 27 yards and a touchdown. It was wet and rainy out there. Tough to grip the ball for most part of the game. Ryan, him and Julio had a good connection early on, but Ryan could never get it in the end zone. He targeted Julio 3 times in the end zone, and he just couldn't catch one. And then Calvin Ridley went down in the second quarter with the ankle injury, and we don't know his status. So Matt Ryan, he did what I expected. I said he'd get anywhere from 15 to 20, finished with about 18 on the night. Not a great guy to start at the quarterback, to start off with 18, but it's better than nothing. He could have been much worse for Ryan, so I'd say he had a decent game. The second guy is Todd Gurley. He didn't have a good game at all. Once again, I said you should have benched Gurley in my running back bench video, and Gurley, if he didn't get that touchdown, he was a total dud last night, but that touchdown saved his day on the ground was Todd Gurley. He finished with 18 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. And like I said, Gurley, he don't get the catches. His yards per carry ain't all that great. And if he don't get a touchdown, his ceiling's 7 to 9 points. And last night he had 1060. So if he don't get that touchdown, he finishes with 460. He looks slow. He had a couple good runs towards the end of the game where he scored the touchdown. So Todd Gurley, he's a guy I keep saying you sell him high also, because when is he going to fall apart? We saw him on the sidelines during the game on and off between drives and stuff. So Gurley, he might go down any minute with that knee and the bad weather. There could be some trouble for Gurley. The next guy's the backup running back, Brian Hill, who I said last week to stash on your bench, and if you did, not bad. Hill, he saw some decent work, 11 carries for 55 yards and 2 catches for 9 yards. He looked decent, was Hill, out of the backfield. He got a lot of rounds he ran, and he got some plays. We saw Gurley, like I just mentioned, on the bench with that knee. That knee could go at any time for Todd Gurley. So if Brian Hill's out there, and especially if you're a Gurley owner, you got to go out there and grab him this week for a handcuff, because Gurley's one run away from being out for a while, and I'm thinking that shoe's going to drop soon. So Hill, he looks solid. I think he'll be the every down guy, or at least a 2-down guy. If Gurley ever went down, he's only 11% owned in leagues. So Brian Hill, not a bad, intriguing option to get on the wire coming up. The next guy's Julio Jones. He started off on fire in the first drive. He had 7 fantasy points in PPR, and he finished the game with 10 targets, 7 grabs for $137, and he finished the night with 2070. So that's a great start for you fantasy owners who have Julio Jones like I do in 3 leagues to get off to that 20-point start from him. Jones, he looked good. He was a little banged up again. I thought he wouldn't finish the game because of the hamstring in the rain, but Jones gutted it out. Now he's got 10 days to rest, which is good. Maybe his percentage of health will go up even more. He looked 80% out there, but Jones did his thing, and he's a top 5 receiver every week when fully healthy. I said he was a guy to sell high, but right now he's doing what you want him to do. In the last 3 weeks, he had 33 fantasy points in week 6. Last week, he had 17 and a half, and then 20 this week. So Julio Jones, he's doing his thing now, and him and Ryan on the same page. The next guy's Calvin Ridley, who's a top receiver this year in fantasy. In fantasy points is Ridley, but now who knows how long he's going to be out. We got no word yet 100% on Ridley. The x-rays were negative on his foot, but obviously he didn't continue on in that game. He left in the second quarter. But he would have an MRI later on this week to see. But we'll see if he plays in week 10. The Falcons now, they got the bye in week 10, so week 9's probably not going to play is Ridley. They'll give him that extra week of rest. Plus, he gets the 10 days now, though, which is good. But Ridley, he had a decent game. At least he didn't come up with nothing. If you're in PPR, he gave you 7.2 points is Ridley. But now with the foot, we'll see how long he's out. I'm saying he's out till week 11 is Ridley. The next guy was Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst, I said in my start video, he's a tight end you want to start this week. And if you did, you got a pretty solid PPR performance out of Hurst. 5 catches for 54 yards and then 10.4 points. So that's a good fantasy game, especially for a tight end position that's very weak this season, except for the few guys in Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Jonnu Smith, and Mark Andrews. But Hayden Hurst, he's in that top 10 echelon of tight ends, I think, this year. And last night he gave you a good game, was Hayden Hurst from the tight end position. And Matt Ryan, he likes him on those underneath intermediate routes, and he'll continue to throw to him. Now let's move to the Panthers side of things. And Teddy Bridgewater was a highly anticipated pickup this week when I said you should go out there and get him too. His ownage went up 15% coming into the week. So a lot of managers started him. And I versed Bridgewater actually in 2 leagues. And he didn't do what he was expected to do. Bridgewater with only 14 fantasy points. 176 yards, a touchdown, 5 rushes, and 30 yards. I thought he would have a better game as Bridgewater, but he didn't. Maybe because it was the weather, plus he was knocked out for a couple drives, I don't know. But Bridgewater all night, it looked like he was missing his throws, and he couldn't get anything going for his team. So Teddy Bridgewater, he's a guy I think I'm going to shy away from now in the next few weeks. He's got tough matchups, and in a plus matchup this week, he didn't show up. His next 2, he's got Kansas City and Tampa Bay. Those are 2 teams I'm not going to play him versus if I have him. So drop him for something better on your bench, or if you need a waiver wire pickup for the week. The next guy's Mike Davis, who this was his final start as a starter. Now Christian McCaffrey's going to come back. Davis, I don't think he's going to get the workload anymore or even touches. We saw Matt Rule say he is, but Davis, he's done as a starter. If you traded him before this game, good for you. Luckily, I did for Gronkowski in 1 league. And Davis, he had a disappointing night also. 13 carries for 66 yards, which is good yards per carry. But in the passing game, he was non-existent with 2 targets for a catch and 11 yards. McCaffrey, week 9, he's coming back. So Davis, he's going to be a top drop candidate this week going into week 9 for next week. So Davis, he did his thing for the first few games. And if you traded him, good for you, because now he's got no value. And he'll either be dropped or you just have him sitting on your bench. The next guy is Robby Anderson, who I said he start this week. And he had a little bit of a down performance, Anderson. He finished the game with 5 catches for only 48 yards. Anderson last time versus Atlanta had a monster game with 19 fantasy points. So for him to only get 9 points last night's a little bit of a disappointment. I thought Anderson, he would get you anywhere from 15 to 20 in this game, but Teddy Bridgewater, he was struggling with the ball. The conditions weren't all that great. So Robby Anderson, he just couldn't get the job done, but I'm not worried about him. I think next week he'll have a bounce-back game, is Anderson versus the Chiefs, in a game where they're going to have to throw the ball a ton, is Carolina. So Anderson, he might be a buy low candidate going into next week with this off performance. The next guy who had a real off performance is DJ Moore. And Moore, he's a very inconsistent player this year in fantasy. He had 6 targets, 2 catches for 55 yards. And Moore, he didn't get his first catches in the game until there was only 3 minutes left in the game. He caught a nice out route with a crazy stiff arm he had, was DJ Moore. Then he caught a bomb that I don't know how he caught it in between 2 defenders, and what a throw it was from Bridgewater. But besides that, DJ Moore, what a dud performance last night. Moore, he had a couple good games the last few weeks, but he might be a touchdown-dependent receiver also, because his targets the last few games haven't been all that great as Moore. But Moore is still a guy I'm going to go out there and start every week, unless I'm stacked at receiver or in the flex position. But Moore, I think he'll bounce back. This was his worst game in the since week 4. He had double digits from 5 to now. So I think DJ Moore, he'll be fine, and he'll bounce back for the Panthers. The next guy's Curtis Samuel, and if you played him, lucky you, because this guy, he wasn't on the radar for a while, but now he's available in 80% of leagues, and he's going to be a hot waiver wire pickup this week. He finished the game with 21 fantasy points, was Curtis Samuel. 3 rushes he also got for 23 yards, and he took a rushing touchdown from Mike Davis, which we forgot to mention. So if Davis got that touchdown, his ball game would have looked better with a 14-point game. And for receiving, he had 4 catches on 5 targets for 31 yards and a touchdown. So Samuel, coming out of nowhere in a good matchup. He's the number 3 receiver on the Panthers, but he didn't disappoint. And he had a great game, was Curtis Samuel with 21 points. And he's going to be the pickup of the week, possibly a receiver. And he's a guy I'm going to ride with if I could get my hands on him. Because now the last 2 weeks, 2 great performances. 17 last week, 21. They're using him as a gadget guy. We saw it last week and we saw it last night. So Curtis Samuel, good game for him. And he was the best Panther receiver coming out of the game versus the Falcons. So that's the analyst of the Falcons and Panthers in Week 8.